This is David Spada here with my co-host Elliott Harris and our special guest Sandy Reevy. And let's get to our next guest, a gentleman who played defensive line for the Green Bay Packers back in the 60s, won 2 Super Bowls. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's a successful businessman. He operates several radio stations. Willie Davis. How you doing, Willie?
Hey, how you doing today? You can tell by voice, hopefully, that I'm very excited these days.
What are you excited about? Nothing happened on Sunday.
Well, for one thing, when I was in Chicago for the Western Division playoffs, I said then the Packers was indeed going to go to the Super Bowl, and I said that they were going to win the Super Bowl. And one of the few times in my life that I've been absolutely correct.
I would have bet the Steelers would have won that game, but that's why I don't bet.
Yeah, well, there was a time when I just said, and I maybe even said it on the air, that this is a team of destiny. I mean, you pick any other team in the NFL that would have had maybe in total 15 injuries in the course of a year, but 8 would be starters and critical people and could still get to a Super Bowl. I would say you have an unusual team, great coaching, and all the things that go with it because, it's tough enough typically for teams to overcome 2 or 3 injuries.
What made the Packers, was it Aaron Rodgers that led them to the Super Bowl? Was it just good team play? Was it coaching? What was the key to their success this year?
Well, I think you put your fingers right on number one. Number one was Aaron Rodgers, no doubt about it. He was the difference in the Packers and where they sit today. I would say very closely followed by Coach McCarthy and Capers. I think they did an outstanding job, and I think therein lies the history of why the Packers are entertaining and creating a home for the Lombardi Trophy.
Yeah. Now everybody looks at the Packers and thinks offense, but it's really the defense that came through when they needed it to.
Yeah, that's why I said you gotta say that Mike was smart to bring Don Capers in, who was a real student of the 3-man front, 3-4, and they flat out made it work. I would say right now, I would pick the defense almost an equal compliment to Aaron Rodgers.
Spoken like a true defensive lineman.
Yeah, well, I still believe that the offense will sell the tickets, but the defense will win the game.
What won for you guys back in the 60s, the offense or the defense?
Oh, it was many times, it was definitely both, but there were a few times when the defense just simply was the difference. I mean, we won games and everything else when many times the offense was struggling. But overall, maybe the greatest thing you can say about a football team is it's a team effort. I mean, you got 11 guys out there, defense, 11 guys, offense on the field that's got to play of a certain level. Then your special teams got to come on and make its contribution. And I think all of that was a part of our teams in the 60s, and I think you see it as a big part of today's team. When teams struggle with their special teams, typically sometimes it's all the way from losing to not supplying what you need.
How did the Green Bay Packers, how are they so successful? You had so much talent there. I mean, on offense, you had Taylor and Hornick at running back, star quarterback. Nowadays, they'd all be fighting for the ball in the spotlight, but you guys seem like you didn't have that problem.
Yeah, it's so interesting because someone recently asked me, said, what is the real difference between, or is there a difference? And I would say, yeah, there's far more passing in the game today. There is a different system of passing with what they call the West Coast offensive passing strategy. And I would say this, that while every team won't acknowledge that they have a little West Coast in them, you look at the game plan and you look at the execution on the day of the game, and you see that West Coast offense is indeed well and alive in the NFL.
Okay. Now, people are looking at these recent Super Bowl champions and thinking, that's an awful young Packers team. This could possibly be the start of a dynasty. How do you view it in this day and age?
It always scares me, first of all, because having been a part of a team that ultimately won 3 games in a row, which still remains the NFL only team that have achieved that accomplishment. I would say to you, I remember Coach Lombardi talked about it's harder to maintain than attain, and there's a lot of truth in that. You can go out and kind of get there once attaining, but to stay there is very difficult. And I can tell you right now, every team that plays Green Bay in 2011/12, they're gonna play them with a sense, let's beat the Super Bowl champs, and that's why it's so difficult. It is very difficult to maintain. So I would say yes, the Packers have that great chance, and you look at some teams in the past, the 49ers and New England and Dallas, a few other teams, they put together a lot of championships in within a short period of time, but no one has won 3 consecutive, and I would say it'll be a while yet before they do that.
But again, free agency basically breaks up these teams, but the Packers have no major free agents, and they'll be in great shape, even if there's a lockout.
You know, I absolutely think the Packers are in a great position to kind of create a new mold for this whole system, because I can tell you right now, with the age and the sense of the key people on that team, I can't imagine that they can't bring in wherever they have a need here and there. But for the next 5 years, they truly be the team expected to win.
When do you have time to come on radio shows? I'm looking at your profile here. You're on the board of Alliance Bank, Dow Chemical, Johnson Controls, Kmart, LA Gear, MGM Mirage, and you operate 6-7 radio stations here. When do you have time to do this or even sleep?
And you can say also, I love radio. I can tell you that
radio has a future, you think?
Yes, and I'm hoping at the same time. But I can tell you that serving on some of the corporate boards have been one of the most interesting things in my life, because what I found is sometimes they were almost as educational to me as hopefully the contribution that I brought to them, which was many times a greater insight into urban America and places where I was in the beverage business, and during those times that I just think that whether it was Los Angeles, Chicago, or a few other major cities where I had worked along the way, I think I could bring a bit of insight. Sara Lee Company, I was on that board for them, and I can tell you right now, I think that I was very helpful in terms of how we should try to sell Jimmy Dean's to Hillshire Farms, because I had worked that market every day in other jobs.
Now, do people still recognize you for the football player that you used to be once upon a time?
Well, you know,
or they look at you now as the businessman.
Yeah, it's strange because in many ways they do. And I can say over the last week or so, I have gotten more calls from long-lost friends than ever. I'm going, where have you been? But, it's there's a lot of, especially with Packer fans, there's just a lot of, I remember when you played, that kind of conversation.
When you gave the trophy, the helis trophy, to the Packers when you guys beat the Bears, if the Bears would have won that game, were you going to give the trophy to the Bears, or were you going to refuse to do that?
No, I was not. And, it was interesting because they always had it that planned that way. If the Bears had won, they were going to present the trophy on the field, and probably Dent, who was their honorary captain, was going to present probably the trophy. And it was always that, well, if the Packers win, we want you to present the trophy to Mark Murphy in the dressing room. Well, believe it or not, in today's world, even with the greatness of sports, the people have concern as to sometimes trying to avoid potential problems. And I would think that was one of the reasons in Chicago.
Makes sense. So I see we have all these radio stations. Are any of them sports stations? We're not just outright sports stations. We carried ESPN a little bit up until a couple of years ago. We do carry sports shows and that kind of thing, but nothing for an extended time period. I got an idea for you. There's two people who do a show called Sports and Torts who have interviewed 60 NFL Hall of Famers and about 70 total Hall of Famers, and that might be a good add-on to one of your stations.
David's known for his soft sell approach.
You just gave me a great idea.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Willie. It was a pleasure talking to you, and even though you guys beat us, I'm happy you guys won.
Hey, go Pack! And one of the nicer things that I thought that happened to me this year was Mike McCarthy, and he said that Bart Starr and Willie Davis had been very instrumental in providing some support and information and everything else for this year, and I felt very special about that.
Because you're a great guy. You're doing a lot for the community, a lot for the businesses, and keep it going.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
There was NFL Hall of Famer Willie Davis.